All right, well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. My name is Dr. Lamar White, and I am the president of the DC Black MBA Association. This is my fourth and final year in the association. And I'm super proud of everything that we've accomplished in the association. This year, we are 40 years old. So we've been serving the DMV community for 40 years strong. And we're also an award winning chapter. For the last 20 years, every single president that has served this chapter has earned the title of Chapter of the Year nationally, including our chapter. We won the award in 2021. So we're really proud of that. Definitely would like to thank our panelists that are here and those that will be joining us. We have, and if I mispronounce your name, please correct me, but Duran Shell of the District of Columbia Public Schools, and Herman Driscoll, yeah, of Bibb County Schools. And also to be joining us is Avron Gordon of Fulton County Schools and Daryl Silas of Bibb County Schools. And pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening. His name is Mr. Troy Parker. He's the Director of Career Development at the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. And this outstanding gentleman serves as our Vice President of Membership for the DC Black MBA Association. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Troy, who will assist. And I also want to let you know that Ms. Dominique Clayton is on the call. She's also a board member for the DC Black MBA Association. So if you have any technical issues or any questions, please direct them to Dominique Clayton. Mr. Troy Parker, over to you.
Well, thank you, Dr. White. So thank you for everybody that came out tonight. Today, we're going to talk about the report card, Black males in the classroom. And so the way this format will go is like pretty much like a hot potato. So I ask a question, one person answer it, and then pass it on to the next panelist. Is that cool? And we could just generally have a conversation about this. It's a heavy topic that's been around for a while. So my first thing, I just want to just get a little bit of insight of who you are, Duran and Herman. If you kind of give us a little bit of story about you and your background. I can start with you, Duran.
All right. So just for the sake of my own nerves, I do pronounce my name Darren.
All right, Darren.
Yeah. So I've been teaching now for 14 years in the K-12 setting. I actually got my desire to teach by my lack of actually having male teachers going through school. From K to 12th grade, I had one Black male teacher. That was my middle school PE teacher. And outside of that, I never actually had a Black male teacher. And so I left high school, again, all white females. I went to college. Actually, most of my professors were white females. And most of my classmates as an education major were white females. And actually even in grad school, I had one Black male classmate through the whole program. Just did not see myself represented a whole lot, but wanted to be able to provide that for students who look like me in communities that I grew up in. And so that's what led me to teaching and what keeps me there today.
Great, thank you. And what about you, Herman?
My name is Herman Driscoll, and like you said, I work for Bibb County Public School District. I've also am a product of the Bibb County Public School District. Originally, my plan was not to be a teacher. I had my bachelor's in biology, but it's throughout my time in college and even in high school, people always spoke about how we needed more Black male teachers. We needed more Black male teachers, but it's kind of because that wasn't where I wanted to go. I kind of ignored it, right? And then it just happened by chance that one of my college mentors told me, you know, you really need to teach. And so I looked into it, started teaching, and it wasn't until I got into my master's program to get my certification that when I started reading the impact of like socioeconomic levels and, you know, culture and community and the impact that had on how well African-American students, both male and female, how they had an impact on how they perform in school, I then began to see the need for more representation and more representation of us in the classroom. And so I've taught for 6 years. This is actually my first year out of the classroom. I'm an academic coach. So I'm really working with teachers on how to teach our students. So, you know, so just the need for representation is what keeps me there.
Great. So education wasn't your first career path?
Oh no, my first career, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian, but my bachelor's is in biology. But like I'm pretty sure like many people like me, I didn't have a lot of African-American male teachers either. A lot of my teachers were African-American female. My mom is actually a teacher. She's been teaching for 34 years. And what's so funny is even though I taught in the classroom for 6 years, I was a lot of my students' first male teacher. So period.
And what about you, Darren? Darren, was education your first career path?
I actually did not go into the K-12 setting upon graduation. I ended up getting a job opportunity teaching remedial courses at a community college. But that was only because I was in a program that was like 4+1 program where you had to earn the certification at the 5th year. So I ended up sticking with that for 2 years before ultimately going to the K-12 setting. But it was always the plan that I would be a K-12 teacher.
Wow, that's outstanding. So I have a question here. So Black men make up about only 2% of the country's teaching workforce, but their presence in the classroom is shown to improve outcomes for students. A study by the Institute of Labor Economics found that low-income Black students who have a Black teacher, man or woman, for at least 1 year in elementary school are less likely to drop out of high school and more likely to consider college. Still, only 7% of teachers nationwide are Black. So why is this, and what can we do to improve these numbers?
I can start with that question. One of the things that I've noticed with my Black male counterparts in the education setting who choose to remain in the profession, it's primarily motivated by their desire to be promoted within the profession. And so they find teaching as an entry point, but only stay in hopes that I'm going to get to be promoted. For those who don't stay, the primary reason was salary. They just couldn't sustain on the salary that they were earning. I started out in South Carolina working in schools there, and the salaries just were not there. They're just not. They don't provide for a livable wage. And so it doesn't sustain most Black males who more than likely have families that they want to provide for, or just for their own personal reasons that they want to, a decent salary. I have noticed though, in here working in DC public schools, there is a little slight shift in that where the salaries are higher. They do provide livable wages, particularly for those teachers with a graduate degree or who have 7 to 10 years of experience. They do find that their salaries are substantive enough to sustain them in the teaching profession, but they do end up most likely leaving for a promotion.
What about you?
I'm going to kind of piggyback off what he said. I'm in the South in Georgia. So one thing that I have noticed is the salary piece. A lot of times what I've heard being said, and I've also said myself, is we'll have the same level of education as someone else in another field. But when we come in, we don't make the same amount of money starting out. And we have to put more time in and go back to school, get more degrees to make the salary or the livable wage. And I think that's why a lot of people aspire for promotion, because I think if they came out making a livable wage, or they came out making a decent salary, then the focus would not to be promoted. And then I would also say, on top of the salary not having a livable wage, I would also say that the workload sometimes gets to be a bit much. And so if I don't make enough money to live, or I have to have a second job, and then I have this workload on me as well, either I'm trying to be promoted or I'm trying to find something else where I make more for less work. Because everybody who's a teacher knows until you get tenured or you mature in the profession, you take work home. It's not just an 8-hour day, with calling parents, data, all those things. So I think the salary is a big piece, but the salary as well as the workload plays a part.
So with that being said, do you feel that Blacks in education is a viable profession to get into? If you was talking to some students that was just getting ready to get out of school, how would you promote that to them to make them, want to be in education despite the salaries and the differences in the salaries?
Well, I will say that the salary piece isn't enough to get Black males to enter or stay in the profession. There is certainly a negative stigma about the profession that goes beyond race, that certainly we would have to resolve for anyone to want to go into the profession today. We're seeing the numbers decline drastically. I do work part-time as an adjunct in the education department at UDC, and just in the past 3 years there, I've seen our numbers decline in the number of students who are entering in the education major. And so there's certainly some things that we as a profession have to work out to sustain them, for particularly working in urban schools. Some of the things that they've noticed, that salary isn't even one of the top reasons why people choose to enter or remain into the profession, but things like, the possibility of promotion, their relationship with their school administrator, student discipline, school culture. And so I think to get someone, or particularly Black males, to enter the profession, you will have to thoroughly, get them to believe that these things will not be a factor for them within the profession.
I would think because I think you asked us how would we talk someone or motivate someone into going into the profession. And I think to be a teacher, you have to be someone who wants to make a difference and make an impact. Because like you said, all those things are things that need to be resolved, and those are things that we face and we deal with, and they're greatly affecting the profession. And it keeps a lot of students from going into colleges of education. But it has to be, I feel like you have to focus on the impact that you can make. Yeah, there are a lot of other negative factors that affect, affect us day to day, and they aren't just about race. But if you want to make an impact, if you have a desire to invest in your students or have that impact, then that will be a reason you stay. That will be a reason that you seek that out. And a lot of times, that's what kept me in the profession. It's the impact that I had on my students, and those students who come back and look for you the next year, those students who you are a permanent part of their life. That's one of the main reasons I stayed.
Great. So I guess being a Black male teacher, you have a lot of roles to fill. You're kind of like a superhero, because you have to teach, get your curriculum, but also a lot of schools appoint the Black educator as one of the disciplinaries. So have you experienced that as being in school? As when a kid is acting up, let's go get the Black teacher.
Of course. I'm sorry to jump, but I think that's one of the first things they expect of us. Even in middle school, we have clusters, and what ends up happening is everybody on the team sends the problem child to me, or what you notice is that you become the timeout room. Or I've even been the ISS room when the ISS teacher wasn't at school. They was because after you build a reputation at the school, and you may have taught the 7th and 8th graders, I taught 6th grade for a long time. They send them to you because the kids respond differently to you, whether they be male or female. So we do become a huge part of the discipline plan, or the disciplinary, whatever has to take place, the consequence. You're not only teaching, but you're housing the students who got in trouble. So I think we play a big part in, just send them to Driscoll's class or just send them down the hall. So they do look to us to lead, but sometimes when they say lead, it means handle the discipline problem.
I agree. I certainly have had my share of that. I think for a number of reasons. I do find that myself and most of my Black male counterparts are someone who the students easily build relational trust with. Certainly, there's always that they make connections with you, your background. Most of the students who I've taught, grew up in communities similar to myself. So we do have that shared experience, and a lot of students will gravitate to that. And so I think school administrators, they take notice to that. Oh, he has good rapport with them, or he can get him to calm down or her to calm down. So let's send them down there. So I've had many times over the years where students have just shown up at my door, and not with any chaperone support. It was, oh, I was told to come down here. And so, and I think over the years, I just got numb to it. I just, okay, go sit down. But initially, it was a problem for me. It's because I'm like, I'm in here teaching. I'm not babysitting. This isn't what we do in this classroom. And so, I did have to find ways for myself to kind of navigate. Oh, here's an extra 5 students in your classroom. And you teach in Georgia, Driscoll. At the time I was teaching in Georgia too, where there were no class caps after the recession. So, that easily could be 40 kids sitting in a room. And I was a high school math teacher at the time. And so, you're sitting with 40 kids in a geometry class. It's not always ideal. And that's one of those things too that I was talking about when you talk about just the working conditions and those non-pay things that do exacerbate your experience as a Black male teacher.
Thank you. Hey, how you doing, Darryl? So right now we were just talking about the experience of being a male teacher, and sometimes you're expected to kind of be the superhero. So you're not only required to teach your class and participate in your curriculum, but also we also sometimes get appointed the disciplinarian of the school, especially when it comes to our young Black males. And I wanted to know, have you experienced that as an educator? I think you're on mute.
I apologize for that. Thank you so much. Yes, throughout my career and different districts I have worked, I noticed that Black males oftentimes are seen as or are called on as disciplinarians to provide some hope and some inspiration and some advice and compassion, and just sometimes having a listening ear. And sometimes, we have to make decisions and we say things with tough love to get this attention of our students. And that's a role I have taken upon very gently. I don't take it lightly. I have been in districts where I was the only Black male. When I first started my teaching career, I was the only Black male that was in an academic area. There was one other Black male on campus, but the Black male was down in the gym area. So, a lot of times when there was conflict or when there was issues or problems in dealing with our Black youth, both male and female, I will be called upon. So I assume that role, and I don't take it lightly. Even today, where I'm in my career, I try to develop and build relationships, especially with our male youth. I do find that our male youth and sometimes our female youth are, sometimes very challenging, and sometimes I call uncoachable. And oftentimes relate to them being uncoachable. One day you're gonna be unemployable because you have to listen, but trying to build that relationship, that rapport, that trust, and let them know that, of course, I've been in some tight situations too, but we can handle things different. So that role, oftentimes we take upon and we don't take it lightly, or we don't count it robbery that we hold those roles.
Great. So one question I just want to ask, because I feel the pressure sometimes too. So in my role, I'm the only Black male, and probably we probably have 2 Black professors in the whole building at our university. And the majority of the Black men that I see that work there are like janitors. And, passing them some days, sometimes I stop and say, hey, you're at the University of Maryland, you can go back to school, and get an education. It's free. I try to run that through them. But how does it feel just being, a minority in your profession? And do you have support? And if you don't have support, how are you dealing with it?
Well, I'll speak first here. I'm at Northeast High School in Macon, Georgia. And of course, we are more urban with a metropolitan city. We have probably about 88 to 90% majority minority Black in our school. But I've been in situations where, again, just like you, I was the only minority. I oftentimes got advice from my mentors along the way, educators who had retired, my military friends that left the military and came in education and retired again. I oftentimes will seek out advice and oftentimes pretty much learn to endure and also always be a professional. I had one of my mentors told me everything I do, always be a professional in dealing with youth in any situation. Also don't be afraid to ask for help. I've been in isolation. My first experience in education, again, was being the only male surrounded by people that didn't look like me. I was, coming to education, pretty much brand new. I asked a question about, where could I get resources to support the subjects I was teaching? And I was told that it was downstairs, 2 doors down to the left, and there's a closet at the end of the hallway. And that was actually shared with me by a department chair who was a white female, a little bit older than I was, but I felt lost. I did not feel supported. I didn't have the resources I needed. The principal was great, but the principal was too busy to attend to my immediate needs because as a new teacher, trying to grow and trying to feel my way through. So I felt I was on the island by myself and not supported in that arena. And oftentimes I asked for help or share some of the resources. And I was told one time, well, this is my intellectual property and I own the rights to it. So basically I was just told no. So, but being the person I am, I began to research, I began to call people, I began to do things to better my craft, to improve my instructional practices and strategies in the classroom. Oftentimes, I felt alone, but, along the way, I learned a whole lot. In my position today, I don't want any new teacher or any teacher to feel not supported and don't have the resources or the tools they need. Along the way, I try to build, my 2 boxes of instructional strategies and resources along the way and share them with everyone that I can. But I've been there, done that with not being, supported and feel that I was alone.
Thank you. What about you, Darren?
I had a very similar experience as Daryl coming into the profession. I did too feel very isolated coming into the profession. And, we looking from the outside in, I will say overall, like I had really nice teachers, and they were nice to me going to school. And so I really expected that having teacher colleagues that, they're going to be really nice to me and supportive to me coming into the profession. And that wasn't the case. I won't say that it was everyone, but the majority of my colleagues definitely worked in isolation. And part of it I will attribute to their own workplace stress. But as a new teacher entering the profession, and I wouldn't even attribute my race as an issue to that, but just as a new teacher entering into the profession, it wasn't one where you felt very welcomed or felt very supported. And so I honestly, after that first year, thought, is this for me? Do I want to work in this profession where, I feel isolated on a daily basis and feel that I have to go out and find all of my own resources and tools and materials because, you know, coming in, you expected those things. And certainly when you're looking from the outside in, you know, my teachers did have pencils, you know, they did have lessons prepared and strategies and activities. And so you just think that, oh, you know, those things were provided for them. And then when you come into profession, you realize quickly, you know, you got to provide all of that on your own.
I'm gonna say, as far as coming into the profession, I think I had a slightly different experience, but I think at the same time, I haven't been in education as long as my colleagues have been. This is only like year 7 for me. I didn't have a lot of, as far as going into teaching, I didn't have a lot of African American males to like link up with, but I did have some strong African American female teachers who kind of took me under their wing. Like I remember my first year teaching, my collaborative partner was this fiery short woman who took me under her wing, and it's almost like a big sister type thing where she made sure I had what I needed. She, you know, she guided me through, but I didn't have any mentors who were African American males. And then in the profession, what I realized was when we started getting African American males in, either they were a lot older than me or they were a lot younger than me. So it was like the gap in age kind of pulled us apart. But what I did when I did feel isolation when I was in my graduate programs getting my undergraduate degrees, because I was the only African American male. And and so I would find myself being isolated by myself, or having to work on things by myself, or not, you know, asking questions and nobody answering them, or, you know, reaching out into the group chat and nobody saying anything. You know, I felt it there. But as far as in the workplace, the African American women always looked out for me. They were always my mentors and made sure I had what I had. So it was a little softer there, but it would have been nice to have a mentor who was African American male who had gone before me to kind of guide my steps. And, you know, especially being in like a high stakes testing subject, because I taught math as well. So that would have been nice, but I kind of didn't have it when I first started.
Did you ever experience imposter syndrome when you first started? Or do you have that going on now? That's to you, Herman.
Imposter syndrome.
So do you feel like you totally belong now?
And
when you first started, did you feel like you totally belong?
When I first started teaching?
Yes.
Or when I first started, when I was in my graduate. Now,
you first started teaching.
I felt like I belonged. I felt like, well, I don't think that's as more as like it just being my race. You know, when I started teaching, I was one of the few people who was in my 20s when I started. Like a lot of people who started when I came into the profession, this was a second career for a lot of people. So as far as my age goes,
I
was a young one. When I started teaching, I was like 24, 25, and there was only one person who was younger than me, and she was a white female, and she was younger than me. And what I found was she would kind of be in competition with me, because we both taught math. And so she said to me one time, you know, she said that you were made for the slower kids. I was made for the gifted kids. And so it was kind of like, okay, what are you trying to say? Like, because, you know, like, because I'm Black, I do well with the kids who are impoverished and can't read and can't do, you know. So I remember feeling like, as far as my age, and then linking up with her, and then thinking I had somebody, and then I didn't, you know, because then it turned into this competition between the two of us. So yeah, I feel because I've gone, now I'm at Appling, and almost everybody that looks like me, then yeah, I kind of do feel more like I belong there now. But where I came from at first, no, I didn't. It was a hard first year, you know, being young and then being new to a profession. And yeah, so looking back on it, now that you've asked me that, not in the beginning, no. I felt completely out of place because all I had, and because the people I had were African American female. So it was kind of navigating that as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's something, because you look like you're 24 and 25 now.
I'm 32. So but at 24, 25, being my first profession, also being in graduate school and dealing with that its own things. Yeah, it was my first 2 years were tough. Now that you ask me, they were tough because there was nobody. I felt like there was nobody I could relate to, and because I have not been on a true job before, I had not had any other profession. I don't think I had the skills to navigate through. I had to learn. I had to learn a lot on the go. You know what I'm saying? I had to build a really tough skin really fast. I had to get a poker face really fast because dealing with pain. Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, I didn't feel like I belonged. I'm sorry, I got kind of long-winded. But you brought up some feelings that I haven't. I didn't investigate. So yeah.
Troy, I would also add to that too. For me coming in, I don't necessarily think that I doubted my abilities, but I did question whether other people doubted my abilities. Especially in the high school setting, getting to teach upper level courses almost like a rite of passage. They always feel like you got to put your dues in. But coming into the profession, it did bother me when I would see that only my white male counterparts would get courses like AP Calculus or Pre-Cal, and feeling that, they think, well, you don't have the ability to teach that class, or you're not qualified to teach those courses. And for years, I would notice that most of the Black teachers, male and female, would be in Algebra 1 or geometry, which typically had high failure rates for minority students. And then also too, in your AP Calculus and your Pre-Cal, AP SAT classes, it was most of your white students. And so I certainly did feel that, there was this, perception that Black teachers could not teach those students or teach those courses.
That is so correct. I want to comment on that. My career also is accommodated with coaching high school sports. So I played college football, and so when I began teaching, fortunately, my high school football coach, I saw him in passing, and I was up in the Atlanta area, and he's like, I know you finished up, you want to teach. And I was 22 years old. I had a lot of things going on. I was in the United States Marine Corps Reserve at the time, and I was doing some things. I was undecided where I want to go for. I had actually received a commission in the reserves, and part of that was I had to go active duty. I didn't know if I want to do that the rest of my life at that point in time. But what happened, I ended up going to a rural school in South Georgia. And again, I experienced, I told you I was the only Black male there. So you're right. All the teachers that were there, veteran teachers, they were teaching the upper level classes. As I matriculated and moved on to my 4th, 5th year, I ended up in another rural school in Middle Georgia. And I was talking with the superintendent one day, and he shared with me as I was transitioning to that school that they needed a AP US history teacher. And asked me, well, willing to go get trained, and of course I did. And so that summer when I came back to begin school, he actually introduced me. And again, at that school, I was the only Black male also. There was one other Black female that was a member of the ELA department. He introduced me as the new AP US history teacher. And I received stare downs. It was almost like, are you smart enough to do this? Or you sure he's certified? And then when we had open house, I met the parents. And of course, majority of the kids were white. And they didn't take it very well that I was a Black male teacher and their daughters and sons coming in my classroom. And there was a few parents who asked, could we come visit? We want to see what's going on. And we had an open door policy, but I didn't feel intimidated. It was a challenge to me that, hey, I could perform, just as good as any other teacher in the classroom. I've been prepared. So here I am. And it was almost like scary for me when I really think about it. That first year I taught AP, parents would call, they want to know why students didn't have a A in the class, and that was, I mentioned DBQs and those things they had to do, and I had rubrics and things even back then, they had to follow. So I did, and I dotted my I's and crossed my T's when it came down. They were trying to insult my intelligence by questioning my instructional practices. But that year, believe it or not, within 2 years, I became the teacher of the year, and first Black ever teacher of the year in that school system that was 80% white. And so I felt redeemed. And later on, I actually left that school, went to another system, and in coaching sports also, I became the first head Black football coach, African-American football coach at a 4A school here in Georgia, and went to another school district and did the same thing. And won a few Teacher of the Year awards, Teacher of the Year in a few places. So, but it didn't deter me, even though I didn't look like them, and I felt the tension. But over a period of time, and my stay at those schools, they realized that, hey, I knew what I was talking about, and I could get their kids to perform. And test scores, was my backup. That, hey, I actually, when I came here to Northeast High School, I served in the capacity of instructional coach, went back to the classroom, was given all econ. I began to teach AP econ and regular econ, and I moved our scores up significantly to about 82% passing rate. And it wasn't just me, but I got kids to believe in what I was doing. I got support of the parents, and I had a very supportive administration. And here at Northeast High School, it was kids that looked like me who when it come down to taking AP classes and making 3s, 4s, and 5s on the AP exam, there was 4 and few in between. So we are seeing an increase in the number of students that are taking AP and passing on AP exams. And I'm not trying to toot my horn. It's building a relationship with kids. Get them to fall in love with learning. And as a Black male, you can do it. Oftentimes, the stigma of a Black male, that stigma out there. They don't expect much from us, or they expect us to somehow mess up or do something bad, wrong soon. But I think we are beating the odds, and hey, we are educators also, and we inspire and change kids' lives and impact their lives for future generations.
So Daryl, being a Black male educator, and our students, sometimes they run into a lot of problems, and we know that sometimes they need a little bit of extra attention. But do you ever feel guilty when you give the minority students extra attention in your classroom?
Well, I've been in a position before where I have, and oftentimes I wonder if I'm doing them harm, by giving them extra chances and opportunities, and actually, going bend over backwards, giving them 3 or 4 chances. Oftentimes I go back to my biblical belief. It's almost like forgiving a person. How many times are you going to forgive them? 7 times, or 7 times 7. So, as an educator, I believe in my belief that I was predestined to do what I'm doing. I think I was pretty much anointed to open the eyes of students, to make a difference, to educate. I think this was my destiny. And so, yeah, there are times when I know I have, spared the rod, that I have actually, and sometimes I know when you talk about fair, what is fair, and sometimes we all struggle with that. We know sometimes, sometimes we can't treat every situation the same, in order to get fairness or equality or equity in what we do. But, teaching and educating is an art and a science. So, as long as I lay down at night and know that I have provided each student with a collection of experiences that they could become lifelong learners, and I have made a difference, and I have said something to change the trajectory of their life, I felt that I'm a winner, and I have accomplished my task.
Amen, amen. What about you, Darren?
Sorry, I was on mute. Honestly, I don't necessarily feel like I feel guilt. I, not in a sense, directly. Sometimes I do feel guilty when I can't always be there for my students, because it can be taxing sometimes. Sometimes you do need to just go to the bathroom. Sometimes you do need to leave school. You can't stay late every day. You know, sometimes you need your planning period. So I feel guilty when I'm not always available. But I will say one of the things that I have noticed within my own self and working with my minority students in school is that I tend to be tougher on them. And I think it's this subconscious belief that I have to be because the world is tough on them. So one of the things that I just being reflective this year is just like examining how I respond to students and, you know, interact with them. It doesn't always have to be in this tough, you know, quote unquote manner. But the being that support system for students can be a bit taxing at times, and just also learning how to manage my own workload and, you know, my own mental health and dealing with students and their issues in schools.
Great, thank you. Have you experienced that any, Herman?
I don't feel bad about the extra. I don't about the extra attention that I may give at times, because from my experience, a lot of times they don't have anybody else, or a lot of times when their parents don't know what to do or what resources are out there, or their parents don't know how to engage them. So somebody has to be willing to give them that time. Somebody has to be willing to be in their corner. Somebody has to have a little more grace, to have a little more patience with them. So I've never felt bad. Now, if someone else of another race needed some extra help, okay, I'm your teacher, I'm going to help you. But I have chased and gone above and beyond and out my way to provide that extra help, and I've never felt bad about it. I've given you 3 or 4 times to do complete an assignment. Instead of writing you up, I've pulled you in the hallway to de-escalate you and to calm you down. I have act like I didn't hear you slip up and curse, because somebody has to give you that chance, because you may not get it from anyone else. So I've never allowed myself to feel bad about it. I've always said that I give that opportunity to all my students, but sometimes I don't give you the option of taking the opportunity. I just give you the opportunity, and I'm okay with it. I never violated any rules, but I'm okay with it.
So just getting back on subject, this 2% thing like really messes with me. And so what do you think are like the roadblocks or the barriers that are keeping Black males from becoming teachers?
Well, I'll reiterate, you know, one, the population of the profession, you know, it doesn't sound as attractive to Black males as, you know, being a business major or engineering major. When you think about enrollment, just for example, at HBCUs, you know, top majors for Black males are business and biology. Those are where most Black males go. One that aspire, you know, for those entrepreneurial pursuits, and then as well as going into the medical profession. A lot of Black males do aspire that when they go to college. And so, you know, when you weigh the option of medical school or, you know, a classroom, for most Black males is, you know, more attractive to go that route. So I think, one, we will have to work on the attractiveness of the profession for Black males. And then also supporting those who we do get to enter the profession. Because when you talk to many of my colleagues in my school, because I do work in DC where many of our teachers are African-American, they would tell you not to go into the profession. So we haven't done a really good job of internal marketing as well.
And Herman, just a quick question. So how can we promote value in the field so that educators can truly, you know, be themselves in this field and feel good about it?
How can we promote value in the field? I guess for me, I think we need to really start work on making sure that parents and students respect their teachers. You know, I feel like we need to bring esteem back to the profession, because, you know, when you hear that somebody's a doctor, it sounds different than when you hear somebody's a teacher, you know, or just the fact of that. When I had a professor tell me a long time, well, when I was in school, she said that everybody has seen a teacher, whether it be in school or they have a relative who's a teacher. So everybody thinks that they can do it. And because everybody thinks that they can do it, it diminishes, like it makes the way they view it, they don't view it as highly as they view something else. And that's why everybody comes in thinking that they can do it and they realize it's hard, then they leave. So I think that we really need to change people's perspective of being an educator. They look at our breaks or when we're out and how they feel we have all this time, and they don't really realize the mental stress that we're under, the expectations and the responsibilities that we have. And I think that if we start really talking that and realizing what it really takes for us to be an effective teacher, and and know that we really go to school and we really get degrees and we're really not just wasting people's time, then if we bring that respect back to the profession, then we'll have more people who want to go into the profession. But if they feel like they're not going to be respected by our community or respected by their bosses or respected by the parents and the students that they serve, they're not going to want to do it. Because all you hear about now, even if you go, and I know I'm 32, but even if you go on TikTok, the level of disrespect that they joke about, the level of disrespect that you see on TV, and how, it's just, it really will turn somebody off to the profession. Every time you turn around, there's a joke or a meme about the level of disrespect the teacher receives. And a lot of people my age and younger, they're not going to want to tolerate that. They're not going to want to tolerate being talked to any kind of way. They're not going to tolerate people making decisions without considering them, or decisions that don't make sense to them. So it's gonna have to be a lot of changes that take place. But I think the biggest change is the level of respect that teachers receive in their community and from the people that they serve.
Great. And this last question is for you, Daryl. What do Black men need from schools to stay in the teaching profession?
Well, they definitely need support. When I say support, and I look at when I entered the teaching profession, and unlike today, I think the value system was quite different. Today, teachers need more nurturing, where at the time I knew I had to actually go out and make it happen. Today, teachers need more support, especially our young males, when oftentimes, as Mr. Driscoll talked about, the stigma in society about teachers, in some states, teachers, are not paid well, and it's a profession that, I think from the federal to state levels that you have to support, and it got to be something intentional, and it got to be a lot of incentives to get Black men, because I have 4 brothers and they're in the construction business, and they can make more money they can make more money in 3 or 4 months, or at least 2 or 3 projects I make all year long, and they don't work all year long. Okay, so again, that monetary value, that intrinsic value, and there's something that districts, also state, local, federal has to do support, and again, to support teachers in the classroom and also outside of it, incentivize it. And there are some preparation programs, and we have a lot of alternate preparation programs that can actually lure our males into the classroom. But the stigma of teaching, and I think, and I look at, several factors or several things may have caused that low perception that, we are not, we are not considered an important part of society, that, it's just a job to have, but it's more than a job, because I know that teaching is the only profession that makes all others possible. Every profession has to go through teachers, and we're the doorway to success. But we have to feel valued, we have to be supported, and definitely compensated. We can do a lot of things to help ourselves, get compensated. But overall, sometimes that support, and again, that stigma on the outlook of a male teacher. I actually had a relative when I first started teaching. It's like, I know you're not going to do this forever. You're just doing this temporarily. Can you find something else? And it was like, no, I find value and inspiring and motivating kids and doing what I'm doing, because I'm changing lives. It's not just about me, but you got to have a special type of person to survive in our school systems, whether public or private, and in the field of education.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't make us rich, but it makes us feel good on the inside. And I like to thank all of you guys, man, for really, everything that you do, because education shapes who we become. And so right now you're shaping some young minds to become great leaders in the world. And for that, I really appreciate everything you do. I want to be mindful of the time. I think we got about 5 minutes. So I did want to open up the floor for anyone that had any questions for the panelists. This is the time now that you could ask either one of the panelists if you have a question.
Hey everybody, Rudy Reese here with Edifying Teachers. I'm just curious about whether any of the panelists have had a chance to get plugged in with any of the kind of grow your own programs or ways to kind of mentor high school or college students who might be interested in potentially becoming educators.
So I used to sponsor a Future Teachers of America's cohort in Georgia and in South Carolina. Here in DC, they don't participate in that program. But we are at the University of the District of Columbia starting a Grow Your Own program through high school students this year. We did receive some additional funding for that. So we will be targeting our minority students, particularly for our school. We go into the hardest hit communities within DC, so which are our Ward 7 and 8 schools. We are the #1 preparer for that area. So certainly working with that program to help to get students attracted to the profession through that program. And one thing I do want to note is that you put into the chat about financial support. That's also another way I think that we could support minority students and enter into the profession. When you talk about going into debt, 50 or more thousands of dollars, you want to get a job in a profession where you feel like you can pay that debt off. So I think by either providing a wage that will support paying those off or providing those scholarships for students at the onset will help them to want to make the profession a bit more attractive for students.
All right. So we have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody have any additional questions for the panelists? All right, going once.
Quick note, the National Center for Teacher Residencies, NCTR, they're actually about in a couple minutes to have a Twitter chat on the same topic. So folks who are tuning in or participating might want to jump on and contribute to that conversation. Lots of really good regional affinity group work by Real Men Teach and other groups around the country in this space. So I want to thank you all for this conversation and allowing me to tune in.
Thank you. And I also want to thank, I'm sorry, you can go ahead, Darren.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I just noticed him here in the chat, and he probably doesn't know he's going to be called out, but Mark Joseph, I actually read a book that featured him on the cover, the Call Me Mr. book. And I've been trying to get my school to start a similar program. I've didn't get to experience it myself going to school in South Carolina because my college at the time didn't participate in the program. It certainly isn't expanded as it is today. But I think that's also another great way to attract more males into the profession by having such programs such as the Call Me Mr. program, more prevalent throughout the urban areas.
Perfect. And so I just wanted to leave with a quote from Nelson Mandela. And the quote says, "Education is the most powerful weapon that can be used to change the world." And that's what you guys are doing with education. So I want to thank you all for being a part of this panel. It was some great information. And if you're ever interested in joining the National Black MBA, just shoot me an email. I can carry you through the process. And if you have any information that you would like to learn about the National Black MBA Association. So without further ado, this panel ends in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a good night, guys.